My guest today is Ana Melikian. Ana is a psychologist, author of the book Mindset Zone, and a keynote speaker who focuses on human-centered leadership in times of rapid change. I first heard her speak at a local pavilion event where she gave her keynote called the 100-Foot AI Wave. Her core idea is simple but powerful. AI is not a tsunami you can wait out, it's a wave you have to learn how to ride. And doing that well requires strengthening the human side of the equation, not just upgrading the technology and tools that you use. In this conversation, we talk about what leaders are misreading about this moment, how AI is affecting people at a nervous system level, and why inner strength, connection strength, and culture strength matter more than ever. If you find this conversation useful, take a moment to subscribe. It's free, and you can always change your mind. And now here is my conversation with Ana Melikian. Ana, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Sweet. So in your presentation, you described this moment as a 100-foot AI wave kind of coming for all of us, right? It's unavoidable. What do you think most leaders are still misreading about this wave is actually going to do and is doing to people in this moment?
I think there is a diversity. There are people that are totally in, and the people that are still kind of, let's see what is going to happen. But if you are in the business world, we have to face this wave. I'm not saying if you are a retiree with a nice savings and living somewhere nice, maybe you can ignore this. But if you are in the workforce or if you own your business, you absolutely have to pay attention to this AI revolution.
Absolutely. And what do you think? Because I think most of the conversation is about the technology itself, how effective it's getting, how efficient it's going to make everything. But nobody's really talking about the impact that it's having on the people, right? And I know during your presentation, you had that exercise where everybody typed into 3 words that describe how they're feeling about AI. So it seems like your focus is more on the thing that is really under addressed, which is the impact that it's having on people. So what are you seeing in the people that you're talking to? How are people feeling about AI, and how is that element being overlooked?
And we have the tendency to overlook the human factor all the time. And my background is psychology, so my bias is to look at it. And in any technological revolution, we have to face that this is not the first time that we are dealing with technology that will change the way we live. That is absolutely truth. And in one of the other presentations that I do, that I go more in the historical perspective, I always say that if we look in the big picture of humanity and human history, humans exist because of technology, and technology exists because of humans. If we think about starting fire at will, was not Homo sapiens sapiens, was before the Homo sapiens sapiens existed, but was one of the technological developments that allow us to develop a species. And the Stone Age, if anybody doubts that you have to have know-how how to create from a stone an object that can cut or pierce, just go to the backyard, pick two rocks, bang them against each other, and tell me the result. There is a lot of technology is really any application of knowledge to achieve a certain result. And from that wider lens, human and technology were always there. And biologically, it's interesting to know, if we go to anthropology, that if we compare agricultural revolution, that was what allowed us to live in communities and then develop the cities afterwards. That was like 12,000 years ago. Biologically, we are not much different from our ancestors 12,000 years ago, but our life is totally different. So, and that is why, because technology and culture has changed. And that is the lens that I bring here. We cannot forget that humans and technology, this is a collaboration. We invent the technology, the new technologies change the way we live, we adapt to it, we invent another technology. And as humans, biologically, we didn't change too much, but we have this capacity of thinking, of feeling, of creating ways of being together that change the way we live and allow us to create new technology. What is a little bit different with AI is that is really, how can I say, touching certain things that we consider very specifically human. And when that happens, that has happened also in the past, but affects our sense of self and some of our core beliefs. And as humans, we have tendency to protect that core beliefs very much and react to the situation. If you think about, for instance, the Copernican revolution, when we start to create theories that maybe the Earth was not the center of the universe, why was that so polemic? And it's something that we speak in terms of history, that was the Copernican revolution, because it took us from the special place to be the center of the universe. So if we are not the center of the universe, what makes us special? If we are not the only ones that can write music, write poetry, what makes us special?
Yeah. And also with that Copernican revolution, right? A big part of that was that the church was like, that was one of the church's core truths that they were banging the drum of, right? That the earth is the center of the universe. And then when that was proved to be false through the invention of the telescope with Galileo, that completely undermined the church, with then, really disrupted things by people started looking at the church with a little bit more critical eye. So that had a huge impact outside of just us feeling less special. But so you feel that AI is going to be different because it's different maybe because it's going to infringe on more of the tangible, like human things and the tasks and the work that we do as humans that we previously thought of as uniquely human. And that's going to be kind of the unique aspect of it.
Yes, and is what they call a general purpose technology that is going to affect very quickly the way we live and our workplace. So
Yeah.
affecting the jobs we are seeing that already for the first job. That was always a challenge in many ways, but it's becoming more difficult for people when they go out of college to get that first job. Now, many
Yeah.
of these technologies are going to do tasks that usually were that the intern, the first job kind of thing. And that is going to have effects in terms of the society that we have to deal with.
Yep. Absolutely. Kind of a side note, but have you read the book Technopoly by Neil Postman?
Not yet. You spoke about it. It's in my reading list, but I
Yeah.
didn't read it yet.
Just so much of what you say reminds me of that book, because that book is just kind of a history of disruptive technology and its impact on humans and human culture. And it just absolutely blew my mind. And kind of the final conclusion of the book is that are firmly in the final stage of the three stages that he lays out of Technopoly, where the technology that we create is firmly in the driver's seat of the direction that we're going as a human society and what we value in our culture, right? It's like we invent the technology, and then that technology shapes the future of what we value and what we optimize for, and human society all the way down. So super fascinating, highly recommended read. Yeah,
And
but
because another peculiar thing that is really important to understand, even comparing to other technological advances, recent ones, if we think about the internet. It took, I would say, internet was in the end in 87, so in of the 1980s, beginnings of the 1990s, but starting university. And then we had to have a modem. We had to have a landline with a modem. And then slowly until become so like everybody nowadays in a city can have access to the internet without being connected with a wired, but took time. Even if you think about social media, all the things, they start in the 2000s, but was only with when the smartphones became a thing in 2007, first with the iPhone and afterwards the others, that we could take the social media in our phones and became the transformational force that became. But there was years that led to it. If you think about in 2022 with the ChatGPT, what if you had internet connection, a device could be a computer or mobile phone, you could access ChatGPT. So everything was there, and that is why they jumped so fast to 100 to the milestones that they got, because all the elements that were needed for we to have access to this technology were there, and everything became, oh, this is different and quick.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's all happening very fast. And if we do look at the history of disruptive technology, right, it does take, a decade plus for it to reach its final form where it's mass adopted, everybody kind of understands how to use it. So, I mean, if we apply that to artificial intelligence, right, which has gone back all the way to, the 1940s when it first started being researched and developed, but it didn't come into popular culture until 2022 with ChatGPT 3. So if we set that 10-year shot clock, right, we're going to go all the way till 2032 until we're really fully using it. So there's a lot more to come for sure, but
Yes.
there's a lot to unpack with what you shared, the evolution that these technologies go through and the disruption that they have on society is becoming harder and harder to, and this is also a core argument of the book Technopoly, where the technology that we're creating in this Technopoly stage that we're in is impossible to predict. It's completely impossible to predict, right? Like with the internet, nobody really understood the impact that it was going to have on society. But I think an easier example would be that social media was initially invented to help people connect with friends and stay in touch with friends using the internet and online. They had no idea that it would directly impact the outcome of presidential elections, right, 10
Yes.
years later, or that it would be creating childhood depression, right, like depression in children 10 years later, right? Like the impact that the technology is going to have becomes harder and harder to predict with the more complicated the technology is getting. So it's impossible to say how artificial intelligence or predict how the impact that artificial intelligence is going to have on society. But you have distilled down in your study of history the characteristics or the things that people or organizations need to do in order to effectively navigate this 100-foot AI wave, or you distilled it down into inner strength, connection strength, and culture strength as those three human strengths that are needed for an individual organization to ride the 100-foot AI wave. So for somebody listening right now, how would you describe each one and what they actually look like in practice?
Yeah, and just let me give one step back first and then go there. Because like you said in the beginning, I compare this to 100-foot AI wave, and I use very strategically 100-foot, because first, I don't like to call it a tsunami. Some people call it a tsunami, but if this was a tsunami, the clever thing to do is get out of the way. Okay. You cannot, if it's a tsunami, you get out of the way until it comes and goes, and then you rebuild. I believe this is 100-foot wave that is not a tsunami. And like I say in my presentation, I'm originally from Portugal, where we have 100-foot waves, that they are these very brave people, these big wave surfers their mission is to surf this 100-foot wave. And every winter they are in this place called Nazaré, just north of Lisbon, the capital of Portugal, where they are trying to surf 100-foot waves. So because I love that we can surf this, we don't need to be crushed by all this. We can really leverage and ride this wave. That is the thing that I really love about this metaphor. Plus, if you are riding or wanting to ride a 100-foot wave in nature, like in Nazaré or in the workplace, do you have to be just average shape or should you be in peak shape? to have any
Peak.
chance to make this a good thing. It's logical. We have to be in a peak performance state and peak mental and physical shape in order to be able to navigate and to ride and to take advantage of this. So how do we do that? How do we strengthen the human who is riding the wave in order to take advantage of all these technological developments to the betterment of humanity and not just to create even more burnout, even more of the things that we already have in our world that this has the potential to accelerate in a bad way. Because I think this is one of the classical examples. We have an opportunity to do amazing things, but we also have the opportunity of screwing many things in the process. So my big thing is that if we strengthen the human riding the wave, we have a better chance to leverage this technology to create a better future. And a better future of work. I see this as an amazing opportunity. And in that sense, so how are we strengthening the human? And we have to see always these three levels. The inner level is that the inner work that we can do as individuals. We don't have to be waiting for nobody else to start to do that work. And there is a lot of power in developing our self-leadership. And this is something that we've been speaking for decades, or even centuries, depending on the perspective that you take. If you take a philosophical perspective, you can put centuries on it. But if you think about the 7 habits of highly effective people, it's all about the self-leadership and many other things that are very common spoken in the business world. So that get us in peak mental fitness is really important, and there's loads of internal work that we can be doing. And we have the tools. We have the know-how, we have the science. We just have to put that up as a priority and do the work. So, but we have to realize that human beings are connecting beings by nature and nurture. We know that we have decades of research in psychology that shows that if a child doesn't have the meaningful connections when they are developing, they are going to be affected cognitively, emotional, and physically. So they cannot develop properly without meaningful connections. And in adulthood, we know that there is also big impact of connections. And in fact, there is Harvard has the longest longitudinal studies in adult development. And one of the factors that they can see clearly that affects success is the strength of our connection. So we are connecting beings. And even the metaphor of the wave, these big wave surfers, they do it as a team. So that connection strength is something that we always have to take in consideration. And even if we look to AI, the developments of AI that create the large language model, ChatGPT, and all the rest, was a team of people that arrived to some of the developments that create this. So and we really have to leverage the power of connections, the power of collaboration. And then the third dimension is the systemic dimension, that culture is an example of it, because it's this capacity that as humans we have of understanding the systemic forces within which we live and the game that we are playing, and how to change the rules of the game and not the system in order to create something better. So if we strengthen the capacity of seeing the system and to influence the culture and the systems, if we strengthen the power of collaboration and our inner strength, we are in a much better position to ride this wave.
Phenomenal. And I feel like if I look at those 3 strengths from the perspective of an organization, it feels like culture is the foundation, right? Like as like one element of your culture or building culture strength is going to be building a culture that supports and nurtures the development of connection strength and inner strength with every individual or group or team within your organization. Is that a perspective in which you look at it? Like when you were coming, if you were coming to an organization, you were speaking with a leader of an organization and you were encouraging them to, adopt this framework or this operating system
Mhm.
that you may call it, would you encourage them to begin working on the culture and building a culture that supports the development and nurturing of the connection strength and inner strength within the organization? Is that kind of how you would approach it?
It depends. I see these as three concentric circles. So if I have to represent visually, so is the inner strength, the connection strength, and then the systemic strength. So like three circles. That absolutely the power of a culture in organization is undeniable. And if I'm speaking with a leader of organization, I absolutely can go there and start there because they have the power to set the tone and to change some of the dynamics of the culture. If I'm working with somebody within the organization that doesn't have the power directly to change that cultural things, I will prefer to focus on the inner strength first, because that they cannot just say, oh, but I cannot do something about. No, you can do something about yourself. And even a leader, they cannot, in order to be able to change or to amplify the culture, they have to make sure that they are tapping into the collaboration, the connections that exist within the organization and their own inner strength too. So it's like three leverage points that we can play, but we start with whatever is easier to access, but all the three are influence each other, and we have to pay attention at least to these three levels.
Yeah. And they're all connected, right? By improving your inner strength, especially as a leader, right? You're going to, by nature of improving that, improve the cultural strength or the strength of your system or organization. So yeah, they're all connected at the end of the day. Amazing. So maybe something that would be helpful for the listeners to hear from you would be like everyone that's listening to this is an individual. So how would you lay out a plan of sorts, I guess, or like what are the specifics of that inner strength that you would want people to be able to develop in order to effectively ride this 100-foot AI wave? Like, kind of if you were to break down inner strength, what does that look like? And I know that that's a lot about like what your book Mindset Zone
Yes.
is about. So maybe that'll set up that part of the conversation well.
Yes, and because there is not just one way of doing this, but possibly one of the easiest ways or approaches. We have to realize that we live in a world that is accelerating and we really cannot stop this wave. So that recognition and understanding is really important. And then ask, how can we remain grounded when everything else is spinning? Because for many leaders, that is where their challenge. The world is not going to stop changing. The wave is going to be still 100 foot tall. Is the question, how can you face it in a better place? And in a place of that you are grounded and strengthened. And for doing that, creating moments to work in your mental fitness, I think is the logical thing to do. And we are asking constantly people to be in the top of their game, playing their A game, and not giving them time to be in the gym or in the practice in order to be able to play at their full potential. So I'm an advocate of creating the space and the time to um, to strengthen ourselves, really, to is thinking about, and that is why one of the reasons that I like and use the word strength, because you have to exercise, you have to practice. It's not one thing that you do once and is done. It's a practice, it's a habit that you can build, and you have to honor it and create time to do it. And starting with developing ways of being more self-aware and develop what we call the self-leadership is really an amazing place to start because it's something that we have control over.
Yeah. And it'll be different for everybody. But I'd be curious to know how to, like, what if, obviously you've been in this field for decades, right? You've studied this for a long time. So what kind of practices have you built for yourself to nurture that inner strength?
Creating in our day-to-day is all, yes, I'm very productive. I'm very, and by personality, I like things very structured. And creating in my structure times to pause and to be strategical and to plan and parts to evaluate is something, but this can take different forms. But if we look, even I love to speak with people of the military, and because they have these things about they plan and plan for any contingency. It's incredible how they plan the different scenarios even in and then even in war, they execute the plan as best that they can given the circumstances, and afterwards they debrief. They never jump at debriefing, seeing what went well, what went wrong, what can be improved next time. So, and that I think we have to uh, take that if they can do that in war situations, that is always changing. How can in our day to day, in our work life, we can create moments for planning and create moments for reflection and learning to be better in planning next time.
Yeah.
But if we don't honor that and if we don't isolate that moments and honor that moments, we are running and juggling so many things that, oh, I don't have time. No, we need time for that because that allows us to really have an impact afterwards.
Absolutely. And I feel the common narrative around artificial intelligence, it just creates so much panic and like urgency. It's like you have to act now, you have to be using this now, you have to go. You have to move so fast. And I feel like that can almost infuse leaders or entrepreneurs or just any individual with so much like tension and like a resistance to taking moments to pause and just, get quiet. I think like one of the things that I most disagree with most is just that everything's going to happen so fast. Like, I mean, I think, yeah, relatively to some of the past disruptive technologies, like it's going to move quicker, I guess, but I think it's still going to take a long time for this to. I think people have time, right? I think people can be patient and people can slow down a little bit to think through and make the right decisions. I don't think that this is something that you absolutely need to be mastering and using tomorrow, but I think you just need to make the right decisions for what's best for you individually or for your organization. And in order to do that, that requires you to slow down, take time, think things through, and not forget the important elements of any organization, right? AI isn't going to change general business best practices that have been around for centuries, right? Like it's still going to require an amazing team of people that work really well together, that every individual is supported, right? And has their own inner strength developed, right? Those are never going anywhere. AI is just a new tool that's coming around. Like that AI doesn't change any of that, right? So it doesn't mean that you need to force and go into overdrive and just completely neglect those elements of your organization.
Absolutely. I think this is a yes and. Strategy, intentionality, I will argue that are more important than ever. And at the same time, the first mover advantage is a thing. The ones that get this strategy intention right first and the right group of people and go, they will have an advantage.
For
That is
sure.
also true. But we have to see this. I don't. There is um, a principle in martial arts, and there is a movie that does this very beautifully. Doctor Stranger, I think is one of these Marvel or
Yeah.
similar movies. That there is a scene that the guru she managed to slow down the time And the time is still going fast, but she managed to slow down the time to see when and what to do. It's like that thing that we have of a martial art black belt, that they are always grounded, always center, and everything is going fast, but they are center enough to know what to do in the right moment. And that is that skill that leaders really have to develop. The world is going to be spinning. That is the reality. But knowing when to jump into the wheel and when to stay still and be more strategical is essential. It's like, think about sports and American football, or any of the, most of the sports, they have the timeouts.
Right.
How important is the timeouts, that 2 minutes or 30 seconds that can change the dynamic of the game? The half time in a football game can change everything.
Absolutely.
And then they go to the field, and if they get their mindset right, because most of the games physically they are very similar in terms, but is their mindset. If they get their mindset and their connections, collaboration right, everything changes.
Absolutely. And I'm curious too about this. So most of your research has been about actualizing human potential. Artificial intelligence feels, on the surface separate from that and this huge wave, or this 100-foot AI wave that's coming. So what called you, or what interested you enough for you to make this seemingly a pivot into talking about artificial intelligence and the crossover between actualizing human potential? Like, what brought artificial intelligence and talking about artificial intelligence into your zone, I guess?
Yes. I always, my degree, my bachelor, master, and PhD is psychology. But I always had a love by technology. To the point that when I was doing my master degree, I was doing money on the side by doing web pages. At the time, HTML2 web pages was when I was doing some extra money when I was doing my master program in Spain. And so I always were very much in the intersection of humanities, technology, and business. So if you see a Venn diagram with 3 circles, the intersection of that is the place where my professional life lives. I bring the angle of the psychology of the humanities there, but it's in the intersection of how we are using. For more than 15 years, I'm in the online world. So technology, different types of technology, but it's also technology and the business aspect to it. So I always was in that intersection there. But I always was a little bit, because I'm not a technologist, I was, wait and see kind of thing. I was learning, but when in 2022, we start to become so much aware of this wave, I said, no, this is not time for waiting. If we don't get the human element here better, this can aggravate the burnout patterns that we already have in a big, big way. That is another part of my work, burnout prevention and engagement. So I saw the danger there, and I said, no, I have to have a voice. I want to have a seat on the table, and I cannot be waiting for somebody to invite me to the table. I'm going to claim my place on this table to have this discussion, because we have to bring a diversity of voices here if we want to make this something that will create a better tomorrow.
Yeah. And you felt in the zeitgeist, right? The conversation around the human side of this was just being completely overlooked. And I totally agree. Like, yeah,
Absolutely.
I hadn't heard
And
anybody talk about it until I heard your keynote presentation.
yeah, there are more people talking about, thank God, out there. We need more, and more are welcome. But we have to think, even the technologists that are all in the big companies that are the engineers, all these, they, from nature and nurture, they are, let's call it, I know that is a simplistic term, but it's a good term for people to understand. They are left brain type of people. They like process, they like structures, and they are seeing the potentials of this in a big way. Absolutely. But they are also very much neck up persons. They sometimes forget that they have a body. And our body is part of our humanity. And even when we speak about intelligence, we see it very much in terms of cognitive processes. And it's true that artificial intelligence is being very good in replicating and doing some kind of these cognitive processes in a very effective way. But intelligence, if you consider intelligence, the capacity that we have to solve problems, and then animals will have certain level of intelligence because they are able to solve problems, is more than just the cognitive processes. In the business world, we speak for years about the importance of emotional intelligence. In that level, so if we start, and that is where we can learn a lot of the humanities and psychology. Psychology is being studying intelligence for quite a while and having debate in academia of what is intelligence, what different types of intelligence there is, how can we personalize this, how can we measure this. And if we understand more that nuances and we bring it when we are speaking about artificial intelligence, we are going to see things that, oh, it's like we had a calculator before artificial intelligence. A calculator can do complex mathematical equations much faster and much more exact than a human. That is a type of intelligence, problem solving or a math equation. Wonderful. But we didn't felt, there were people that felt threatened by that, but in general, we adapt quite well to it, to the advantage of having the machine helping us or a spreadsheet helping us to do calculations. Now we have all these evolutions, and we call it artificial intelligence, but it's really a pool of different things that is happening in many of these technologies, and they are amazing in some areas, not so good in other areas. And that is where we have to learn about it, is what we call AI literacy, but we also have to increase our human literacy. The ones that really are going to be able to do the incredible things are the ones that raise both at the same time. They know about a lot of AI. They know about from the prompts and the chatbots to much more complex things, but they don't forget the human that is in the loop and should be on the helm of this, and all the things that we know about the humans and how to create a collaboration between these two energies and these two different forms of intelligence to create something better in the other side.
The human in the loop can't be overlooked.
Yes, absolutely. We never, we are still in the driver's seat. So let's leverage that.
Yeah, let's drive. Let's take it where we want it to go. I guess that.
Yes, but with a very important thing, because we have to ask ourselves, where do we want to go? What is the direction? Otherwise, we can end very fast, very far in a place that we don't want to be. That
Absolutely.
is the caveat.
Absolutely. And I think that sets up a good follow-up here, which is, what are your hopes or what are your dreams for what AI can create, right? Like what is that? I don't know if you spent time thinking about this, but like, what is that direction that you hope AI can take us or help enable us to go?
One of the potentials that I see that I really want to collaborate with others to test, to experiment, to see if we really can make a difference that way. I think the small to medium-sized businesses can have a bigger impact. Small to mid-sized businesses already represent a big percentage of the economy, for instance, here in the United States.
Like
No doubt
70%?
about. Yep. But we have these other big, huge companies that the corporations that dictate a lot of the rules. I think these technologies can be something if we leverage now the beginning well, will allow small to mid-sized companies to have a bigger role and to create a new game that I think will be more beneficial for everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that is my big hope.
love it. Yeah, it'll democratize the options that are available, right? You won't have to just go to these giant corporations in order to get the, service or the product, whatever it is that you're looking for. But small to medium-sized businesses will be able to punch way above their historical weight, and yeah, just do bigger and better things.
A company of 100 people are going to be able things that before you had to have 1,000, 2,000 people to achieve. And oh my gosh, we lose jobs. Yeah, but there are enough problems to solve
Absolutely.
for us to create other companies that focus in other problems and get together
Yep.
to solve. But the small to mid size is something the smaller group of people is easier to keep the culture on
Yep.
than in a big, huge company where things are so isolated that
Yeah.
fire 1,000 people. They never cross their paths, so it's easier to be than if you know everybody and you have to think and you know their families and you know their hobbies and so you know what is important for them. So I think this is a great opportunity. How can we use work to create a better life?
Mhm. Right. And ironically, right, if that is the direction that we go, and I totally agree that that is one of those options, it's one of those paths that we can go down and the one that I'm rooting for. But ironically, it sounds like when you're working in a smaller organization, you're much more humanized, right? You're not just like a number, right? Like everybody that's working there. So ironically, it sounds like AI is going to humanize corporations more because it's going to lead to smaller teams, more connected teams, smaller organizations, which is pretty cool. But and to your point, right? Like this is one of the dynamics that I think is unavoidable, but I'm actually excited about, which is yes, there's going to be job loss, but I think that's going to force more people into being in a place where they have to figure out how to create their own value in the world, right? They have to figure out how to provide a service or a product that solves a problem, right? So, putting it bluntly, I think that this is going to create more entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are my favorite people, right? The people that are out there solving problems. And to your point, problems aren't going anywhere. We're always going to have problems. We're always going to have a need for people that are problem solvers and providing a service in the world.
Yes, and I totally agree with you. And at the same time, I'm worried that the educational system is not geared to create entrepreneurs, are
Yeah.
geared to create followers. And that another area that we should work, and I love the people that are working about AI in education. How can we use this as a tool and as a way to change the educational system to create people that are problem solvers?
Yeah, absolutely. And just more, um, they just have more agency, right? Like, I think, yeah, like one of the big things that needs to be, like, it took me a long time to figure out, and I was lucky enough to, make the dumb decision right after school to go and try and start like grow a new business, right? But I learned this really early on, which is the concept of extreme ownership, which I think you've talked about in your keynote presentation and in your book as well. But the idea that you are responsible for every outcome in your life, and I think that starting your own business and getting to the point where you're responsible for creating value in the world just encourages the adoption of that mindset, because it's like at the end of the day you're responsible for everything, right? You're not going to have a boss that's telling you what to do. You have to figure out what you need to do and you go do it. But I think that's like one of those things that needs to be fostered in the educational process.
And let me give you a little bit of nuance there, because when we say responsible, I think it's really important to response able. If I could change the word, we are
Yeah.
response able. We are able to respond because there are things that happen, there are circumstances that happens in our lives that they happen because they happen, and we really cannot do anything about. That is from a disease, from an accident, for things. There are things that happen. There are the circumstances of life, and some
Hmm.
are not good.
Right.
But we can react to it or we can respond to it. That ability of being able to respond is the secret.
Absolutely. Right. It's not the events that harm us, but it's our reaction to those events that harm us. And we're always going to be in control of our reaction or our response. But I like that. We are response able, right? We are able to craft our own response to this situation that we find ourselves in. I think that's
A-
well said.
And in the beginning, our ability to respond is just become aware of the mistakes that we have done by just reacting to it.
Right.
But that is
And
the
that's
first
only,
step.
yep.
That is the first step.
And that's only made possible when we give ourselves the time to pause, right, and reflect, right, to kind of tying that back together.
Absolutely.
I love it. Cool. Another kind of direct question. So you laid out your hope for what AI enables and what AI creates. I would imagine then that your keynote, the impact that you want your keynote presentation and the work that you're doing, what is the impact that you want to have? If we're thinking really grandiose on the world, but maybe just on the people that you're able to interface with, the people that you're able to impact, what is the impact that you want to have through the work that you're doing?
And that is a really good question and something that I've been thinking really in the past 2 years. I start to speak about this now, possibly now 2 years. And I start in a very generical way, but the business side, my business brain and my business mastermind. So what is the problem that you are solving? And where I'm landing in terms of the transformation that I want to create, my part of in this equation is the human element and the human strength. Starting, how can somebody, if somebody after my presentation goes through my resources or other resources, how can I strengthen myself and develop self-leadership? That is the transformation that I want to make out there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Ignite
Just
that.
equipping. Yeah, and equipping those small to medium-sized businesses with the human strength, like every individual within a small to medium-sized business with the human strength needed to effectively navigate and ride this 100-foot AI wave so that
Yes.
they can capture the advantage that's available to them that this technology creates. So then that can play out into having the um, impact that you dream of that this technology can create. So I think that's magical. And I think that's a admirable focus and transformation that you want to work on creating in the world. And I'm excited to continue to watch and participate in the journey that you're on and the impact that you're having. Because as a testimonial, right? I sat in your keynote presentation, and it's phenomenal for any small to medium sized business owner that's listening to this. I encourage you to invite Ana to your organization to speak to your team and to your organization or your group of whoever it is, because I think it's the right mindset to have and something that's not being talked about enough. I think everybody's, again, is talking about the technology itself and its capabilities and what impact it's going to have on the way that we work, but nobody's talking about the human side of it, which is the most important side, because that's the people that are going to be using it and the people that it's going to be affecting and the people that you need to be in the right headspace or the right situation to be able to capture this advantage. So really encourage the people out there. Last question for you here. So we talked about the impact that you hope AI has, and then the impact that you hope your work is going to have. But with the educational side of things, like just kind of tying this back into like the work that I'm doing, right? So my main focus is on building AI tools and AI systems that help close what I call the execution gap between
Mm-hmm.
learning and doing, right? Like the problem that plagues most info products in the educational system um, broadly is that you don't get any value from reading Mindset Zone, right? You get the value
You
from
don't.
doing the work. Yeah, you get the
Yes.
value from doing the work, that you lay out for us to do in Mindset Zone, right? So how do you see, so like the work that I do is like I build these systems that guide the consumers through doing the work that you would apply in your book, for example, right? Or in your keynote presentation, or in any course, book, program, coaching program, etc. So how do you see AI as being a tool that we can use to, encourage execution, I guess maybe is the way that I want to ask this question? Or like, I guess maybe a more simplified version of the question is, how do you see AI fitting into the educational process, right? Like bridging the gap from learning and doing.
Yeah, we know that one of the big problems of education in general, so after the Industrial Revolution, the normal school start, that was a way really to prepare people to go to the factory.
Mm-hmm.
Education exists previously, but was the rich people that had the money to have a tutor and to have their kids, but most population didn't have that opportunities. Also, you had the religions and also have a role in education. That was we were doing things in groups because was the way of doing it. And we keep doing things in group. And there is, how do you say, we still need a group element. How do you say, the knowing how to work as a team. We know, for instance, that kids that play group sports are better teammates in the future in their work lives than kids that never had the experience of team sports. But this is the AI will give us the opportunity of creating a more individualized plan of action and implementation for individual students with different ways of learning. Because one of the problem of the normal system is then for the average. And many kids are not in the bell curve, in the middle, are in the sides of the bell curve. And these technologies, if well integrated, give us the opportunity to lift more people up and help more people to implement and to play and to experiment in a way that they will become better teammates for everybody. So that is the
Absolutely.
hope. And the Khan Academy, they've been doing excellent work for years. And even now with AI, they were invited from the beginning to participate on it. And they are trying to play with it or creating that individualized, how can we use this technology? You call it the Socratic method, not to just tell the kid the answer, but help the kids to think about steps in order to arrive to the conclusion, and customize to the individual can make a huge difference.
Yeah. Personalized education at scale and just available to everyone sounds like a really exciting foundation for an exciting future where everybody's going to be able to learn the things that really interest them in the way that they learn best. It's just going to set people up for, if you're, it's still going to require the work, right? You have to do the work in order to learn the things and then to go do the things. But sounds like a really exciting future. But Ana, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation. Would love to, have you back another time, maybe a year from now when everything's changed all again. But, the one constant remains that the value of the humans involved in the process. But Ana, thank you so much for the time today.
My pleasure.
3 main takeaways from this conversation. Number 1, AI adoption fails when leaders treat it strictly as a tool problem instead of a human and human decision-making problem. Number 2, organizations that focus on building inner strength, connection strength, and culture strength will make better strategic choices under acceleration and when things are moving quickly than those that just simply move faster to match the rate of change. And third, this ties into the second one, the ability to pause, reflect, and choose intentionally and make better decisions is a competitive advantage, not a delay, in moments of rapid technological change. If you want to go deeper into Ana's work, check out her podcast, Mindset Zone, or her book, Mindset Zone, Actualize Your Human Potential. Both will be linked in the description. And if you want a practical starting point for using AI in your business in a way that supports execution, you can grab my very creatively named AI Starter Kit for small business owners at the link in the description. And if you found this episode useful or interesting, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.